Welcome back, everyone, to the Performance Through Health podcast with me, Martin McPhillamy. Today, we have Dean Gladstone on. And I'm going to have to admit that I actually, over in England, back maybe 10 years ago, I used to watch Bondi Rescue with my younger brother. It was something that I just enjoyed because I have always been fascinated with Australia. It's one of the reasons why I came over in 2016. So it's a pleasure to speak to you today, Dean, and hear all your journey about the breath. Dean is your personal trainer, lifeguard, oxygen advantage coach, Wim Hof coach. Power of Breath is your course and company as well. So everyone go and check him out on social media, jump on and get involved. But Dean, I'd love to really hear your story. Obviously, you've come from a life-saving background, and there's a lot to do with breath there. But what's your journey been like to get you involved in actually teaching breath work and integrating that into your life yourself?
Yeah, I've got a couple of stories in my life, and it all sort of weaves into one bigger story. But essentially, I was hospitalized with asthma as a 9-year-old child. And for me, it was rather intuitive, I believe. I'm not sure if people told me, but I felt it, the connection between the swimming training that I was doing, and I'd stopped. And I ended up my asthma got pretty severe. And then it was really just this connection between the regulated breathing from swimming that was keeping that disease away. Now as I delve into functional breathing training, I look back and it's quite clear I was a dysfunctional breather at school and the learning difficulties and so many things associated with that. But the swimming was regulating my breath somewhat to enable me to do sport and to, I guess, survive. And, I was surviving sort of quite well. The swimming is a mouth breathing exercise. So I do hypothesize all the competitive swimming that I did actually probably contributed to my mouth breathing during the day and at night.
Yeah. Okay. So you started so you were a nationalist when you're swimming, wasn't you? You often go over.
Yeah. So I competed in still water swimming and surf swimming. So we swim for the local surf club. So we're racing in the ocean, and I love that. Yeah. I competed at high levels. I made rep teams. We won national and international medals, and it was. I did really well. When I was about 25, I was king hit and had my 4 front teeth knocked out. And that sent me in, and we talked a little bit about stress at the start. So that sent me into a deep, dark state of stress, anxiety, depression. I had sugar allergies. I had gluten allergies. I had skin rashes and disorders. I used to scratch myself till I bled at night.
Wow.
And at this stage, I was already a lifeguard and I was already a personal trainer. But I ended up with a guy called Paul Chek. I don't know if you're familiar with Paul Chek. And I ended up on a Chek program, or reading his book first, and then ended up with a Chek trainer and just loving the learning about the parasympathetic nervous system. And delved into a little bit of holistic lifestyle coaching. For me, the holistic lifestyle coaching was very much getting people into that parasympathetic nervous system and understanding it. And the Chek stuff, I thought Paul was a long way ahead of a lot of the other trainers. And, looking at society today, these terms are mainstream. If you talk about the parasympathetic nervous system, a lot of the Gen Pop know what you're talking about. If I said that 10 years ago, you get funny looks. So a lot has changed, and the breathwork stuff that I now am super passionate about, and I could talk about it from a lifeguarding angle or so many different angles, is very much what I loved about understanding the nervous system, and particularly the parasympathetic nervous system. When I was studying that Chek stuff, we could talk about asthma, we could talk about me bringing people back to life, and the stress that I've seen firsthand of watching people, almost die. And, I have seen, unfortunately, people die, and in some cases I've brought them back to life. There's a whole range of things that just, like you, I'm fascinated with stress and breath and I love helping people influence it because it changes their life.
Yeah, there's a few things that I want to touch on. I definitely want to kind of an angle that I haven't explored is obviously the lifeguards sort of stuff and how like you've integrated that in there. Well, and I think we'll dive that in a moment. But going back to the very beginning, when you talked about swimming and how swimming has actually helped you coordinate your breathing and that probably potentially helped with your asthma, it's really interesting because what we know about the lung capacities and the actual how the lungs develop, we know that sport itself or fitness itself doesn't actually change the capacity of the lungs. It doesn't like you don't increase the size of your lungs with sport as you develop, but there is one particular sport that actually does do that, and that is swimming. So when there's a suggestion that people who swim from a young age have developed larger lungs than usual because you have to breathe against the pressure when you're underneath the water. Because what you're doing is essentially you are respiratory muscle training whilst you're swimming at the same time because there's a pressure difference that you've got to breathe against. So it's interesting that you were saying that you felt it was regulating just the coordination of your breathing, but perhaps there was another aspect that was actually training your lungs at the same time from doing it as a young age. So that's one thing I wanted to just touch on there. It was something that I learned maybe 8 or 9 years ago when I was measuring lung capacities, but. Yes, the angle that you've taken with the like saving people's lives and stuff like that, and understanding those concepts. How have you managed to integrate like that, I guess, into life saving?
Well, for me, I'm training lifeguards to understand stress. I'm trying to work on a broader level. Unfortunately, I'm not having much success with some of the powers that to be, because when people get stuck in a rip, and about 400 people die every year in rips and currents and drowning in Australia, the message is don't panic. Now, and I know that the science behind don't panic, and having rescued over 5,000 people, I could write a book on it. But yes, being able to train lifesavers and lifeguards is, I guess, a direction that I'd love to go in. Now, if I can't get the powers to be behind it, I guess, I'm training other people in corporate, I'm training rugby league football teams. But it would be nice to really, sort of train that. This is a worldwide movement. Life-saving started in Australia. I get messages from all around the world that people have seen Bondi Rescue footage, and it's helped them sort of save lives, which is a beautiful thing. And in a very much real sense, I'm continuing on a way to help people at the moment. It's just, I guess, not saving lives at the pointy end, rescuing people. It's in more of a preventative measure.
No, that's it's not ever something I've ever thought about, how teaching the lifeguards those methods of being able to keep people calm. And I've got a personal story myself. I grew up in Coventry in the UK, which is basically like the middle of the island. So it's a 3-hour drive from any ocean. So my knowledge of the ocean when I moved to WA was non-existent, pretty much. And like the amount of swimming that I did, I learned how to swim in a swimming pool with my parents, but not like any strength swimming or anything. And I do enjoy the ocean, but it's my first year out there, and it was a winter and it was quite a stormy day. And I remember seeing some guy kayak surfing on like the big waves that were coming through. And I thought, that looks so cool. That looks awesome. So I decided one day after work just to go and borrow my mate's kayak and just go and give it a go myself to see where I can give it a crack. And he just gave me some pointers. It's like, if you go out, just keep the boat straight. If you hit a wave, just keep your head down, get out to the back, turn around, come back in. It's fine. So I'm like, right, I'll give it a crack. I go out there, stupidly went out there with like no one other than myself. And it was pretty stormy. And as I was getting out, I hit this wave. I was like, okay, the boat goes over, another wave comes over, and it froze me up, and I smashed myself in the face with the oar. And then I'm out of my depth, and I'm dazed. I'm looking around, and all of a sudden, like the boat's just gone off. And I'm like, I've got an oar in my hand. In my head, I'm like, I don't want to let go of that because it's my mate's. It doesn't belong to me. I'm trying to swim back in. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking, WA waters, sharks, I'm getting concerned. And then I start to panic. And then I start to panic and start to try and swim as hard as I can. Trying to swim as hard as I can, I'm going nowhere. And I'm trying my hardest and hardest to go anywhere. And I'm panicking more. And I keep going and keep going. Eventually, I do get to a point where I can get my feet to the ground. But my legs were so fatigued, I couldn't even stand up. I kept tripping and dropping underneath the water. And to a point where I said to myself, I've got to go as hard as I can and swim as hard as I can for the next 30 seconds to get myself to a point where I can literally walk out. And I crawled to the ocean, blue and pale, white on the face. A couple ran over to me like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "No, I think I just drowned." It was in that moment I learned what a rip was, what the ocean, that the ocean is, so powerful. And it's, you've got to be aware of these sort of things and not to do stupid things like that. But had I known to stay calm, to stay relaxed, and know the ocean, and even when I got out, how to recover my breathing rather than panicking at that point, it would have been so much easier for me to, I guess, not be so concerned. I remember that night I cooked my dinner. I went to sit down for dinner and I passed out and woke up on the table with my dinner next to me because of the adrenaline dump.
Yeah, exhausted. Well, it's a little bit counterintuitive, and that's the interesting thing. Intuition says, I've got to get to safety. And then that fight or flight response enables us to have more blood flow to certain areas of the body. Unfortunately, our critical thinking is downregulated, and you'd know some of the science better than I. And it's a tragedy waiting to happen.
For sure. So let's talk about it a little bit, like the stress sort of stuff. So, like, if you were, let's take an example of someone in that situation. If they are panicked, but they've managed to get out of the water, but they're still feeling like they've got the adrenaline in them. They're like, what sort of process would you take to go through and take them through to help a person calm down? I think that'd be quite valuable for a listener to hear about, really.
Yeah, interesting. Great question. I don't actually, that if a person's safe on the sand and it's a busy day, unfortunately, they're very unlikely to, unless they fully hyperventilate themselves or they've swallowed water. They're probably too busy for our attention on sort of those crazy, on busy days. We're performing hundreds of rescues. So if someone's safe on the sand, we're not too worried about them. We're more worried about the people in the water. It's,
Yep.
a little bit like a firefighter trying to put out fires. You're just looking around, just trying to spot stuff. It's hectic when it's on. Yeah,
well, I guess a good situation there for maybe the listeners that are maybe popping and listening to this. If you're not able to attend those sort of individuals, then there's something that we can empower them with. If maybe they're feeling panicked on the side of the water, like, you can't give them the attention, but perhaps there's something through this conversation that they can take away to go, okay, actually, Dino and Martin discussed this on a podcast. I heard it. Like, let's not panic. How do I regulate my breathing so that I'm no longer feeling panicked?
Well, it's exactly what we teach. And the first one may be stress awareness, and that's understanding that you are panicked, and the breath may be that giveaway, the posture, the mouth breathing, the sweaty palms, or that stress feeling in the body, that cold, clammy skin. And it's, it's a fairly normal response. And it's okay initially, but what we don't want to do is stay in it for too long. So we want to try and recover and get back to normal. And that's where some intentional slow breathing and that bidirectional feedback using the parasympathetic nervous system just to downregulate the body by telling the body it's okay through intentional slow breathing to get back to a better state in the nervous system.
Yeah, I think that's it. If someone's feeling like they are panicked, they're a bit concerned, they're instantly just trying to get that mouth closed, just trying to take some steady breaths in and out again, just getting like you said, showing there's some safety in the environment of your body and safety in the environment around yourself, and that you can kind of relax a little bit. And I think that's also going to be beneficial for redelivering oxygen back into the body if there's been moments where you have had an issue with breathing and under the water and you've had to get out again. And that might be a good component. But, okay, so
and again, that breathing example is another one of sort of, it's a little bit counterintuitive, right? When we're panicked and stressed, we think we need to breathe more, and it's not. We need to breathe less, and we need to breathe slower, not faster. And we need to breathe in through the nose. So once people sort of understand that, it's so simple, but there are lots of complexities to it. But slow nasal breathing is very much a huge part of the relaxation response.
Yeah, I suppose we could break it down a little bit, because it's for some people it is quite hard to understand. Like, okay, if I breathe less and I breathe slower, like, how is that more beneficial to my body? Like, what is it doing to my body to actually allow more oxygen in? Or like, what am I trying to get from regulating that breathing and slowing down?
I was hitting it simple first, but we know through the Bohr effect that, or I guess respiration on a cellular level, we need CO2 present. And if we're over breathing or breathing too quickly, we're blowing out all that CO2. So the exchange of gas is just not happening. So coming back to that sort of counterintuitive thought of breathing a little bit less and breathing slower, we're going to have that CO2 present for gas exchange. And this is best done, as we've mentioned a couple of times, and I guess people that are familiar with you hopefully will know already that nasal breathing is where it's at. Nasal breathing is linked to diaphragmatic breathing. Nasal breathing is linked to slower breathing simply because of the size of the pipes. Nasal breathing is linked to nitric oxide release, vasodilation, and a whole range of parasympathetic nervous system responses in the body. So all this is going to help.
Yeah, I think that the whole concept of the Bohr effect is where some people kind of get confused. Whereas, the CO2 needing to be there to actually help offload the oxygen into the tissue. If you're over breathing in a state of panic, or if you've come from a position where you've been struggling with your breath, or you've been holding your breath for a period, and your oxygen level will already starting to drop a little bit lower than it should do, and then you're thinking, I need to hyperventilate to get the oxygen back in again. The blood's just going to hold on to that oxygen, and the tissues are not going to get the oxygen. The brain's not going to get the oxygen, which is going to potentially make things worse. Like, for example, at the moment, I'm doing maximal breath hold training, and if I hold my breath for as long as I can, and then you hyperventilate after you've held your breath, all you're doing is just pulling the oxygen back to the muscles, to the blood again, and you're going to more likely to faint. You need to slow their breath and record their recovery breaths. It's exactly the same in a stress situation, or a situation if you've been coming out of the water and you're struggling, you're on the ground, and then you panic. The potential is that you're gonna, that's going to worsen and exacerbate the issue.
Yeah, so it's it's complex. There's complexities to it, but there's some very simple things that people could do and it can potentially save lives.
For sure. And so from an aspect of, obviously, if you're trying to have a discussion with the powers that be to try and get this integrated into how you can teach and approach the lifeguards, I guess, what's the benefits of the lifeguards knowing that? Like, if you were to, if we say, for example, we can use this conversation as a pitch to try and get them to listen more. Like, I know it's a crucial topic, and we know that breath is the essence of life. Oxygen, we need it. So in lifeguarding, like, why is it not being taught regularly? That's the number one, is a question, I guess, for you. And
I don't know if I can answer some questions about some of my
without having to grit your teeth too much.
Common sense isn't that common, is one saying.
Rather than a challenging question like that, then let's not put you on the spot. More of a question of, okay, what's the benefits that you see bringing that to the table?
So, to answer your question, my team, I have trained pretty much by myself using my own resources. Most of those have come to my breathwork and ice bath workshops. I'm available for personal coaching and influencing and training and writing programs for them, and have done for a long time. So I'm already supporting the team.
Awesome.
Yeah, the last couple of years has made trainings and things confusing to I guess support some of the people above me, and maybe why we haven't sort of formalized this sort of training. But yeah, dealing with stress all day, and I worked with a group yesterday who had worked with or fighters. Like, you could imagine like how severe like the stress levels for those people is. Fortunately, as lifeguards, we're not dealing with people trying to kill us, although we are dealing with other people in a way potentially taking their lives into their own hands. So it is super stressful. Yeah, like there's so many ways I can support that stress, through simple stress awareness, through nasal breathing at night for recovery, the way people react and deal with customer frustrations, customer service, because things can get heated for us.
For sure. Yeah.
In a crazy day, there's 5 or 6 lifeguards potentially servicing 30 or 40,000 people, and you literally don't have time. You don't have an opportunity to do a lot of the things that you'd like to do. It's just sort of keeping everyone alive in those crazier periods where potentially it can all happen. But that's what we train for, and remaining calm in those situations. Again, connection to breath work and understanding and influencing stress response. So we love it.
There's a lot to it, because, and it's, again, like, it's more, breathing's become more and more mainstream, and I hope that it's as mainstream as nutrition, exercise, and sleep, in terms of the fundamentals of health. Like, it's one of the things that we have to put up there now and say, general health, chronic health issues, stress issues, it's just as important to look at your breathing as those 3 aspects. But in terms of, like, those high pressure situations that you'll find, the likes of your work and the people that you're working with, that's the same as the policemen, the firefighters, the army guys. It's a life or death situation. If you're not able to remain calm in that situation, and to be able to, I guess, put your focus in a certain area and without being distracted by other means, then that's going to be an issue. It's going to be an issue for your performance as a lifeguard to do that, especially for long hours when it's going to be 40 degrees, 12-hour days. I'm assuming it's very long days that you work as well. And with a busy crowd, people trying to come up to you and chat to you because they just like, it's quite people just like to enjoy and come to talk to the lifeguards. It's just one of those things, especially given the popularity of Bondi Beach and how the lifeguards are seen over there as well. Like, that can be a distraction in itself, let alone the what's going on around you in the ocean. So teaching these tools I outright seen reductions in stress of 50%, people's focus increasing by 80%, their attention, their capacity with their sleep quality, their energy levels, just through putting a practice in of simple breathing tests, let alone the stuff that you do with the ice work as well.
Yeah, well, I don't know what your expertise is with HRV, but on a number of levels, all this stuff is becoming more quantifiable. Sort of years ago when I started my journey and I was coaching people, I don't know, neuroscience wasn't really talked about as much, and they're really starting to quantify gratitude practices and creating neural pathways. And, it's such an expanding field. There's potential to gather data, implement techniques, and demonstrate improved cognition, physical performance, immunity through sort of breath stress style of training. So are you doing HRV style stuff?
If people have, because I'm obviously traveling around the world at the moment, so I don't have access to be able to get the equipment. Although I have been thinking about maybe potentially integrating it into a package where I will get the individual to pay for them,
to
get it sent to them, and then we can monitor it. But if people have their Apple Watches, then I have seen improvements. Now I had a guy. In fact, he was my very first client when I decided to go all in on changing my clinical practice into online stuff. And he had gone through a phase of having testicular cancer, then he had a pulmonary embolism, and then he had a traumatic experience with a breakup with his partner. And he presented with breathlessness following, pulmonary embolism. You're going to get that. But once it resolved, his breathing was still all over the place, and he wasn't able to walk up the stairs without getting short of breath.
Yeah.
And he came for, it was when I was just leaving the clinical practice. We looked at his lungs, and his lungs are all okay now. But I was like, look, I think you've got a breathing pattern disorder. There's a lot of upper vertical breathing, there's a lot of chest breathing, there's a lot of mouth breathing, and you're sighing so often. I think that all the traumas over the past years have shifted your breathing pattern. Now, would you be open to reprogramming that, retraining that, and going through a process? And he did. And one of the measures that we had was heart rate variability. And I think to begin with, on his Apple Watch, it was 22. And his bulk score was maybe like 8 or 9. And his XL max test was maybe like, I think it was like 15 or 20 around there. We managed to double those. And as those doubled, his HRV also doubled, and his perceived stress scale halved. So there was a direct correlation. And I've wrote a case study. I've actually published it on my website, and like it's there. The evidence is so concrete in this individual, and like he come out at the end of it, and he's like, I cannot believe the change. People can't believe the change like around me, that how much I've changed from just doing these breathing protocols. And he's like now my biggest advocate for helping me with testimonials, and he's a great case study because it shows you how I believe it was PTSD. And how that has affected his heart rate variability, and now how implementing some breathing strategies and other protocols like deep breaths and improving his sleep is improved all that.
It's fascinating. I wish I had time to document more of the testimonials and stuff that I get. I feel like I'm sort of missing some beautiful stuff sometimes. After courses, people say the most beautiful thing, but it's in a space where it's a little bit sacred and people are sharing, and I want them to feel comfortable. So I don't want to jam cameras in their face, but it's
use for me, like, I mean, I guess it's because I've come from a background I've been able to scientifically write because I was in that field, but like just even having the data points and just like having where they started, where they finished, no names attached to it at all. And so people don't know. And you can just take that data point to someone and just say, hey, look at this. Look at how much this has improved. And like, you just have a scale to start off with, 0 to 100. How stressed you feel at the beginning, how stressed you feel at the end. Like that.
Well, the Bolt score and the maximal test are really good. Now, lung assessment, what is that something you think me as the breathwork coach should be working with on people? Is that accessible for me, or is that equipment to?
Well, I mean, it depends really on how much benefit that it's going to give those sort of clients, because yes, for asthma, 100% for asthma. I mean, you look at spirometry essentially is the basic form of like a lung assessment that you would do if you go to GP and you had asthma. I don't know, you've had those things where you blow as hard as you can through a tube and you get like the volume that you could breathe and things like that. So, I mean, you could use that sort of thing, but also you can get a balloon. You can get a balloon and you can see how much someone can fill a balloon, and you can say, okay, well, this is the amount of volume that you have in there. And then maybe you could do that before and 8 weeks later after training someone who's got asthma, just to see, okay, well, has the balloon got bigger, or was it easier, like a subjectively feeling as you're blowing into there? That might be a beneficial way to be able to do that. But the equipment.
Would that be a one breath option?
Yeah. So just blow as hard as you can into there. Okay. Well, how big did the balloon get? How did it feel in terms of the actual sensations when you're blowing into it? Okay. Well, let's do some work 8 weeks later, 6 weeks later, however long you want to train them for. Okay, let's do it again. How did it feel this time?
Yeah, assess and reassess. I love it. And yeah, I guess for people listening, you know, it is so simple and so effective, setting goals and sticking to them.
Yeah, I mean, everyone that I go through with a client, if it's an individual, I just literally at the very beginning, it's like, how do you want to feel, or what do you want to get from this? And then usually my breathing stuff, or whatever it is that I'm going to implement, because I've got the sleep stuff as well, or the you know, relaxing stuff around, is like, okay, well, we then structure the program around you. It's around your goals. How do you want to feel?
Yep.
And then okay, well, how can we measure that? And I'll look into certain ways of how we measure that, and find a subjective way or an objective way to measure it. And when we just do that, we measure it once a week or once a month and see how we progress.
Yeah.
It keeps people so motivated as well.
Yeah, it's great. It's so simple and so effective. You know, I was in a little rut myself recently. I'm like, oh, I've got to set myself a little goal. And so, yeah, I wanted to swim 100 meters underwater. And I'm like, well, you know, is that going to be challenging? I'm like, well, I've only sort of done 75, 80 meters before. That's like 25% more. I think that's a good challenge. And yeah, wrote myself a program, you know, some of the protocols that I've developed, and then just sort of went through the process and trained for it. And it was really simple and effective.
And so whereabouts are you at the moment with that? Like,
I achieved it. Yeah,
cool.
I gave myself 12 weeks, and I think I hit it at sort of 7. Yeah, it was interesting. I was sort of post-COVID when I started, and did really well at the start. I did sort of 75 meters first attempt, and then yeah, I sort of struggled to get back to that 75 meters. And once I started consolidating that 75 meters and really feeling comfortable, I guess I got a really nice day, a nice warm day, and I was able to literally just sit, and you're in a slow breathing meditation beside the pool, and then just got in and yeah, just sort of pushed out 100 meters, breaststroke underwater, one breath. Yeah, it felt pretty good, and felt amazing to achieve a little goal that I'd set for myself that pushed me and took me out of my comfort zone and made me accountable, and made me a little bit inspired to just train and live.
I think when you do that, it almost pulls like all your motivation in other areas of your life as well. It's because it's like that, the focus and the dopamine you get from just knowing that you're moving towards a goal, and like it's okay. Well, I think it just helps the structure as well. Like, good for you. Like that's 100 meters into the water is a challenging feat, because if you think about it, it's like, okay, well, do I want to go as fast as I can, like to try and get to the other side? Like, there's a lot to think in there, not just with the breath and the breath hold, but also remaining calm, like your stroke length. Like, so it's like, if you don't mind breaking down some of the things that you went through with your training to try and improve that'd be quite interesting.
Yeah, so I have been super busy lately. So getting in the pool any more than once a week was too difficult. Okay. So I had to incorporate some dry land stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, I basically do some walking breath holds, and I've developed a couple of protocols that I've put in my courses. I've worked with big wave surfers, and we sort of made the analogy before about sort of someone drowning. Above the water, a big wave, and they panic. And a big wave surfer goes through, or a surfer goes through, a very similar thing, except they're under the water. And when a wave holds you under, intuition says, I need to get back up. But again, counterintuitive, it is actually, you need to relax, and we don't have to stay down, but if the wave if the ocean is keeping you down, you're not coming back up.
Nah.
So it's keeping that heart rate low. So yeah, so I've got some programs, and again, I can't have them training either by themselves in the water. So we've developed some on land stuff to get them sort of feeling that strong CO2 tolerance response.
Yep.
And get through a certain number of breath holds to increase their ability to hold their breath, basically.
And that's available for people all on your course, on your online course.
Yeah, that's a part of my course. Yeah, I go into it a little bit deeper, but yeah, sort of holding the breath and getting that repetitive breath hold and relaxing into the stress response. Because when you hold your breath, it's quite stressful. So getting people familiar with that response is essential.
Yeah,
and I feel that probably that's what I had to do. I had to get comfortable and start, get some repetition of hitting 75 meters underwater until I felt comfortable to say, oh, hang on, I can do this. I can go that little bit further.
It's like it's tolerance to CO2, but it's discovering limits as well, isn't it? And it's okay, well, you don't want to be so stupid that you just go, okay, I'm going to try and hit 80, 90 meters straight away and then just pass out and that's the end of it. But it's also, okay, can I get to 60? And can I get to 62? Can I get to 65? It's discovering that limit. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm training for a dry maximum breath hold. I've been for the last 6 weeks. And some of the training that I was doing, I only did it because I saw someone hold their breath for 5 minutes. I was like, I wonder whether I can do that. So I tried to hold my breath and held my breath for 3 minutes 47, and then the following morning I held my breath for 4 minutes 47. I was like, okay, well, I'm naturally pretty good at this, so naturally I've been training in the past, but I was like, I'm actually going to see how I can take this with my training and set myself a goal, maybe 6 minutes plus in my mind. But like initially when I was doing my walking apneas or cycling apneas, 30 seconds I could hold on an inhale, and that was it. Like I was afraid I was going to die. I was like, that's like, I'm going to pass out any second now or whatever, blah, blah, because of the sensations. But 6 weeks later, I'm now doing that like 90 seconds holds. And the majority of that is not a physiological change. A lot of that is just being able to stay calm, allow yourself to feel the contractions, to look at yourself and go, actually, you don't feel like you're going to pass out yet. Like there is some physiological change, obviously, but it's that building that experience of being able to just be relaxed despite your body going, get out of this crazy fall, like start breathing again.
What I particularly love, as a breathwork coach, I sort of do it and teach it, but sometimes you don't actually get into it yourself. And doing this really brought me back into it. I was literally in such a state of meditation before that 100 meters underwater, and I was just so focused. And, I had a consistent meditation what's the word?
Practice.
Consistent practice. I was looking program, consistent meditation practice. And, I did it, and I never got what I get from breathing. And then that's not talking about Wim Hof, like that simple, slow breathing that before I hit 100 meters underwater was magical.
Man, that's so awesome to hear. You kind of like inspired me to think, okay, can I take this to underwater myself now? Like now I've done it dry, and I'm not finished dry, but wonder what, because that's another thing. Another thing is that I know that if I was to put my head under the water and try to hold my breath for 5 minutes, the thought process is different because now your head's under the water. Yes, you got the mammalian dive reflex, which might help a little bit, but the fact that now I can now drown. But the worst thing that can happen laying on the bed is just you pass out and you wake up because you passed out. That's the worst thing that can happen. But in the water, it's completely different. Like that's like life and death now. So then that's a whole aspect of, okay, can I now translate this training into the water?
Yeah, so I teach an underwater rock running course, or an underwater, which was sort of made famous by the Hawaiian big wave surfers. So we get people through some breath holds, get people, get some pulse oximeters on, get people some data, show them their blood oxygen levels. And, I see people with some solid breath holds, better than mine, they're sort of push, and then you throw them under the water to try and pick up some dumbbells 2 or 3 meters down, and they're gone. They're tapping out after 10, 15 seconds. And it's very, very, it's a very good way just to place a different stress on someone and put them in an uncomfortable environment and for them to learn to, influence their breath or their lack of breath while they're down there.
Yeah, it's the specificity in the context of actually being in the right environment, isn't it? Which is completely different. All right, it's been nice to chat to you. I've got a question that I always close this on, and essentially it's like if you were to give a tip for someone starting out on their own breathwork journey, not a coach, but someone just going into just doing breathing themselves, what kind of tip would you give them to help them start?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I deal with a lot of people that have come through the sort of Wim Hof side. So yeah, what I love and what I teach in my courses, I teach a multitude of breathing techniques, a multitude of offerings, and I encourage people to, I guess, follow what excites them, or what maybe what their gut instinct is, or whatever they choose. So yeah, it's, or whatever they need, whatever their goals are, and try and get them connected, right? Because there's no point doing something if it's not connected to your goals, or it's not going to improve your life in some way. So yeah, I guess we want it to be sort of functional.
Yeah, okay, I like that. That's
a long way of me not answering your question, really.
No, I get it. If you were to summarize, if I was to summarize what you were saying there, is like number one, explore. Okay, well, which one does make you excited? But then also perhaps maybe look at getting some mentoring to see what your goal is, to then have the right option to move towards that goal. That's, well, you know, two completely valid tips that I would give to someone, is because you have to do a practice. You have to do a breathing practice that you're going to be able to, that you actually, the best breathing practice for you is the one you're actually going to do. Yeah. The second breath breathing practice you're going to do is the one that's actually going to take you towards your goals.
Yeah.
Go on.
That generalized advice over the internet sometimes, you know, the more I learn, the trickier it is to give it to people. And it's like, yeah, so.
No, it is challenging. It is challenging. I had I get many people who come from the Wim Hof stuff as well, and like they have high anxiety levels, and they're learning to mouth breathe, they're learning to breathe fast, and I'm saying, like, hey, we're gonna have to look at changing that for a moment. Like, I'm not going to throw Wim Hof out the window, but we can come back to that. But let's get you functional first. Let's get you breathing light, gentle, you know, deep, at rest, and then you can start to integrate things that to make you feel a bit more pleasure and high, and build your stress tolerance, because otherwise you're just going to feel, you know, when you come away from it, you're going to get the anxiety back again potentially.
Yeah, awesome.
All right, Dino. So if anyone wants to reach out to you to get onto the Power Breath, or how can they find your courses? Where do they find your details?
I spend a fair bit of time on Instagram these days. Power of the Breath and Dino Gladstone. I've got a website. If you Google me, there's multiple ways to contact me, or check out, you know, some of the bits and pieces. There's a little bit of footage of me, you know, with that underwater journey on my Instagram. You know, it's fun sort of creating content and trying to inspire people, which you do. I've seen some of your beautiful content. And shared it recently as well. So I'm floating around, trying to help people sort of breathe better, and share some of my stories over the years from rescuing people, or I can't say cure. You know, my asthma hasn't been seen in the last couple of years. My snoring and sleep apnea have sort of lowered significantly as well. So it's just sharing the ride.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Dean. Thanks for jumping on and having a chat with me today as well.
My pleasure, mate. Have a great day, and thank you.
Cheers, mate.